There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday Live with Jen and Joe, Creative Finance Playbook. And we are super excited that you're here. If you are not a part of our Facebook community, please head on over there real quickly and join Creative Finance Playbook with Jen and Joe. We are pulling live Q&A questions from there. So questions that have been posted into our group, we're taking some time today answering them. And if you are here listening live, you can drop your questions in the comments.
We're about to have some fun today, guys. Live Q&A is one of my favorites. And if you're already not subscribed to YouTube channel, Creative Finance Playbook, same thing, creativefinanceplaybook.com. Maybe you want some stuff to talk about, right? But today it's about you and answering some questions. And we get a ton of great ones that come in every single week in our Facebook group. And so we'd like to spend a little time kind of going through all the different questions you have. We're going to answer them and they go up on our podcast. So if you're here, you get to hear it live. So
Yeah, so excited. So I think when I look through and even when I ask on Instagram, what is the number one question I get asked? It is, how do you get more leads? And I feel like we talk about it a lot, but in case you're still wondering, let's start with lead generation, because if you don't have leads, you don't have a business. And whether it's one property, a year or one a month, or you want a full-fledged business out of real estate investing, you do need leads, ideally off market leads. So let's talk about that a little bit. Best places to find leads.
yeah, so our coach always told us a long time ago, Ron the Grand, if you don't have leads coming in, you don't have a business. And so for me, what is most important is how am I going to generate leads for our business? Right? And I'm always looking for ways to do that. I actually found a post that I have from Abby from like 2 years ago. She put our blue ad in a Facebook group, and I took the picture of it. I saved it to my favorites. Um, because she had 218 comments. And so, guys, it was years ago we kind of figured out this Facebook hack and we were posting in their groups, but then when we found out what to post in their groups, that's what really set everything else off. Because we used to go to join like Facebook groups in upstate New York, Rochester is where we're from, and we would join whatever town group they had, and we'd be like, we buy houses, and nobody answered that. We'd put pictures of Jen. Jen buys houses. No, maybe once in a while, but not really much. And then we figured out this way to kind of word it to like, does anybody have a house for sale that's not market ready or it's not on the market yet? I'm looking to buy one in the next couple of weeks. And then when we did that, and then we actually found like make a color background, my gosh, that's when I actually,
Everything took off.
yeah, I actually did it on her account. And I remember I put it,
Unbeknownst to me.
she did not know. I jacked her iPad when she was like in the kitchen doing something, and I put it into like 11 groups. And I'm like, let's see what happens. And then all of a sudden I remember her just walking up a storm because
Like,
you
what
get,
did you do? What is it? What are all these people reaching out? Like, all of a sudden, these were not sponsored ads. These are all free. And I think that there's some level of almost disbelief, or it won't work, or it doesn't, it can't. And so that's all mindset, right? And so this is so simple. You have to just try it out. And, it does work. It works in all areas, doesn't matter what state, what county. But there are a few things there we could touch upon to maybe make your presence a little bit more well known. So if some people have all of a sudden dusted off their Facebook account and started it after a few years of being inactive, and so you might need to spend a little time being social on social media there, interacting with other people, friending some people. But what Joe just gave away there, it's one of our favorite strategies that we do teach. It is simply asking everybody, do they have a house not market ready? And it will drum up a ton of questions.
and even on your own page,
Hmm.
right? If you just tell the world who you are and what you do, you'd be surprised. That's the fun thing about social media. So many people are like, hey, I don't like it. Well, that's why you're all here. Well, that's why we're here,
Hmm.
right? So I find it as a great tool to get to meet other amazing people. And a lot of these people became really good friends. We've done business together, we've made money together. So we've taken that friendship to a whole other level because all my old friends ain't doing this stuff. So they don't have any interest in having fun and making money. We do. So when there's meetups, we go to them. I'm going to one this week. We're hosting one of our own next week,
Yep.
right? Because we love to do that stuff.
I think this ad that we call the blue ad, I think it works because it's so vague. It's appealing to literally so many people. So not market ready means it may be a house that just isn't quite ready to be thrown onto the MLS with a realtor yet. Because again, if you haven't sold a house on market, guys and girls, there is a lot of work. Even if you have a nice house, there's always stuff to fix up, to make it presentable. And there's a lot that goes into that. And so just painting that visual picture of not market ready, I mean, you might get a complete, I don't know, disaster zone, like a house that really needs a lot of work, or maybe a house that just needs new paint and some cosmetic updates. You might be attracting, an older person who just has tons of boxes. Now they don't know what to do with all of this stuff in their house. And well, gee, I don't really want to sell on market. So again, you kind of are, just broadening the horizon there. And you also might get some realtors. So keeping it vague, but then answering all those people, those comments that are going to come in under that post, that's what's gold. And that's where you need to really step up your social media game, warm your fingers up, and really start responding to each and every comment. And then grab our 10 questions and start running that script. I hate even calling it a script, guys. It is just 10 simple questions, just seeing if this might be a deal or it might not be a deal. But you got to ask these questions to find out.
Where can they get that script, Jen?
CreativeFinancePlaybook.com. Download our script now.
And these are the 10 questions that we ask sellers.
Mhm.
And this is determining where we're different, right? If you got 5 leads that day, you might have to pick up the phone and call all 5 of them. You could spend 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on, the person you're talking to, and that could tie up a lot of your time. So we always found it best for what we love to do is we'd like to message those 10 questions because why? They reached out on a Facebook post. They're messaging them. We're sending this through messaging the 10 questions. And if we generate 5, 10, 20, 30 leads, 100, doesn't matter, whatever, you're only going to get on the phones with the good ones, right? You've already had some type of conversation through messaging. And I'm not going to be talking on the phone to Mr. or Mrs. Grumpy Pants who are really just super mad or angry. Um, you get to choose. And that's why I love that method of what we've done to put it like training wheels on it. Make it
Mhm.
so darn easy to talk to people and to find leads. It doesn't get any easier than this, guys. It seriously does it.
Yeah.
We've worked with a lot of great coaches who are wonderful people who do a lot of great business, but every one of them have a huge budget of what they're spending to get incoming leads. And this is a way to do all of the business you want without having to do any of that.
It really is easy. And I think that, I don't know, that just keeps coming to me today. It's just like, just share how simple it can be. Like, sure, you might have the goal of one day running a full fledged business. And yes, you can get there. But what do you need first and foremost? You need to talk to some sellers. And a simple, free way to do that is through Facebook. So, again, the blue ad, as we love to call it, you plop those into Facebook groups. And then we also had a client this week who was sharing on his Facebook page. He closed a deal, his very first deal, and he shared on his Facebook that he would give $1,000 referral to anyone who sent him a property that he bought. And lo and behold, somebody came forward and he did the deal.
Yeah, it was exciting. Talked to him in September, but followed up, right? So
Mhm.
it's just all that little thing. But guys, get leads, talk to sellers. It's
Yep.
really
So
that
start
easy.
talking to people. Tell everybody what you do and be proud of that. Because again, it's not about you. It's about the other person on the other side of that screen. Like scrolling, like, oh my gosh, Joe can help me. Like I'm really in the situation and I can't go to realtor. It's not going to work that way, and at least start the conversation there. So with that, a lot of people are asking, how do you track what Facebook groups you're posting in? Depending on the volume, you can lose track. So you find a way that works for you. And this is what I really press upon anyone that asks me that question is keep it simple once again. So whether it is Google Calendar where you're kind of like plugging in, I'm going to call this person this day on next month for a follow-up, or if I'm going to keep it in a binder of sorts and just write down who I'm chatting with, or if you are more techie and you just want to plug in some information on an Excel sheet. But guys, when you're first starting, don't worry about all of the bells and whistles.
And you know what I used to do? And I still do?
I don't know. What did
I'll tell you. I just go to groups and I'm looking for the long list of groups that I'm already in. And I look for a group. I could just scroll anywhere and I click it. I'm going to go to that group. And then what I do is my search bar, if I'm really concerned, have I put one in here recently? I go to the search bar inside of that group in Facebook and I type my name in there. And that will show me all of the posts I've ever made in that group.
Mm.
And if I see my blue ad just 2 weeks ago and it's got any type of comments, I will probably not put it in that one. right? I'll pass and go to the very next one. And then I'll find some that I haven't posted in 2 years. And I'm like, well, geez, this one definitely needs one, right? And I'll put it in there. So if you're concerned that maybe you don't remember if you put it in this group recently, just go into that group, put your name in the search bar. If it doesn't come up or it shows whatever you've posted, and if you don't see it, let her rip.
It almost seems too easy.
You know what? A guy like me could even do it. Okay.
Now here's another thing. Oh, but I'm seeing a lot of blue ads. A lot of people are posting. It's not, you don't want to feel like you're overdoing it. Guys, it doesn't matter because if you are on any form of social media, you know how inundated you are with things that are flying across your screen at a rapid pace. Like I know sometimes I see something and I try to go find it and like 2 seconds later it's gone. I don't even remember where I saw it. That's what social media is like these days. So even if someone else is already posting in an area that you want, we are encouraging you could change up the wording a little, even though just keep it really simple, like same idea there, because we have had people from our hometown do deals in the same Facebook groups we were in that we've posted in, and they've gotten different deals than we did. So it's all about like the timing, who's on there, what algorithms. Like we have no control over some of that stuff. But I just want to encourage you, it's okay. Like abundance mindset, the right person will see your post at the right time. So don't get too caught up in it's already happening out there. But yeah, maybe put a pink background or I don't know, a smiley face, any other
I'll
tips.
tell you what, this is where I don't care. I really don't. And the reason why is the Jana story, I call it.
Yep, that's
Because
what I was talking about.
yeah, because we had this one group in New York that anytime it was a very active group, you try to sell something, man, the people were going crazy in that group all the time. So anytime we posted our blue ad, we got a lot of comments, people calling scam, some people with addresses, leads. We made a deal in that group. We take on a client who are friends of ours who live in our same city, and they start posting in that same group, and a seller reached out to them, the very same group that we've done business, and he had a 12 unit apartment building he wanted to sell.
Yep.
They made the deal, right? And she was a stay-at-home mom who was what, 4 kids and
A
five
newborn.
or, and like 7, 8 months pregnant for baby number 5,
Mhm.
doing this from home through the mom cracks of the day, and did a deal in the very same group, guys. And it was like a celebration. Congratulations, new baby, new deal, all the stuff, right?
There's also follow-up, things can happen if somebody doesn't get back to somebody in time or they miss a comment or something, you just never know. Like a lot of variables can happen. So again, like just kind of don't, like you said, don't care. Like almost kind of put it in your head, like, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to post anyway, and the right people will see it at the right time. That's kind of what I always tell myself too, is why am I posting today? Because somebody needs to see this. Somebody needs to hear it.
Yeah, and then you'll get to a point where you actually just don't care, and the worst thing they could do is like, somebody put the same post in here 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, yep, I'm still looking for a house, right?
Yep.
Haven't found my house yet. Have some fun with it, guys. I mean, it's Facebook. Don't take it that serious.
Yeah, and have fun with it, I think too. And definitely don't worry so much about step 25. Just focus on step 1,
Mhm.
generating the leads, putting yourself on Facebook, even if that's something that's kind of newer to you, just reestablishing like, okay, like I have a profile picture with my face on it, not a cat or a dog or a weird object, just make sure that people can now see that you're a human, because there are a lot of people out there that are impersonating and scamming. So don't let other people assume that about you. Like give them no reason to trust you, not to trust you. Make sure they can really get to know who you are as a person. Just in a few, like I would say like 30 seconds, they should be able to scan your page. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, these people buy and sell houses. Looks like they live in Florida and they do this. Cool. Like I'm gonna start talking with them.
Yep, absolutely.
So some other great questions that we're getting here. Tons of rent to own, so we'll have to talk about that. But let's start with sorry, I saw this one. I wanted to, it was a little more, okay. Do you guys prefer to do a mirror wrap of the existing mortgage or a lease option? Maybe explain what those two things are.
So that's a great question. So I'm guessing when we're buying,
Yeah.
would I prefer to buy it with a wraparound mortgage, where when you say mirror wrap, that's just mirroring their underlying debt. The seller owes, 259 on the house, and you're buying it for 259, and you're taking over the exact payment at the same exact terms. So you're just mirroring that, but you're buying it without having to go to the bank. There's no financing. You're just probably coming up with, I would guess, a few thousand in closing costs to buy that deal. And then for me personally, I would love to own the property. We just met with our accountants. We're talking about depreciation, right? So I like to own the property. I like to control the property, have the deed to the property versus a lease purchase where I'm just leasing it with the ability to sublease it to somebody else, even possibly with a lease option to somebody else too. Uh, so they both have their pros and cons. You do have to come up with some cash to own it, right? Some closing costs, and you're gonna have to pay usually the buyer side and seller side because if you ask a seller to come up with some cash to go to closing, your odds of closing go down, especially if they're in a situation, right? So if you cover both sides of closing costs, that's just what we assume is cost of business to do the deal. To make it easier for us to do more deals, I'd rather spend that than leasing it. However, we have done leases where they don't want to sell it that way, but they would be open to leasing it to you with the option to buy, and then you could do that too. So we always ask both, but I would rather buy it and own it would be my first choice of the two.
And then the second question from that was, which is better for the due on sale clause?
Well, on a lease purchase, you wouldn't have to worry about that at all
Right.
because the deed's still in the seller's name, right? So that would be zero risk there as far as that concern goes. However, if you do buy it on a wrap, you do have the due on sale clause to contend to if that ever were to be an issue. There are some things to make sure that you do correctly, the right way to make sure that that really mitigates that. It does happen. It's not impossible. There's things you could do to kind of fight it. Um, However, if it's that big of a concern, you could buy it with um, or control it with a lease purchase, and that'd be totally fine.
There we go. So in that, someone said, I've been told in New York you're not allowed to do a deed in lieu. I'm wondering how I can secure funding in second position if the lender isn't able to put a lien on the property. That's a little higher level sounding.
Can you say that one more time? So
Yeah.
deed in lieu, obviously you're just trying to buy it without the deed transferring.
Okay.
Land contract.
So he's wondering how can he secure funding in second position if the lender isn't able to put a lien on the property?
Well, you could put a second lien on the property. The new, oh, because they don't have the deed yet.
I just didn't even know if you could like break down what this person's asking.
So what's happening is if he could buy a property deed in lieu where the deed doesn't transfer over to him yet until he pays it off. But what he wants to do is borrow money against the property to buy it. And the lender wants to put a second mortgage or a second lien against that title. But because he's not controlling the title, the original owner still does. That's causing an issue. So, yeah, that can be an issue if you're not controlling the deed. This is why if you buy it on a wrap, you do control the deed and you could do that.
So this is if you don't have the money to come up with closing costs or potential down payment and you're trying to get funding for that.
Yep. Could be. Maybe the seller wants 10 grand down and
Yeah.
you closing costs are 5 grand and you need an insurance policy and a couple months of payments and you need 20 grand to close on that deal. And sometimes people borrow that 20,000 from somebody and that somebody knows they're going to get that money back in whatever way, shape, or form, and they'll put a second lien against it. But if you're not controlling the lien, the deed, he's asking, can you do that? And you'd have to talk to an attorney about that. Maybe
Yeah.
they could put it into a trust or something like that could happen. Um,
You can't do deed in lieu in New York.
You could do those in New York. You
Okay.
just he's I think the more of the question is, can you add a second lien?
Interesting.
That's a
Not some,
deep one. Who asked that question?
he's not, I was hoping he was here. It was Jakai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always talk to an attorney too, because there's might be some creative ways. I always ask them, I'll ask an attorney closing it, what kind of creative ways would you think of to help take title to this where I can have this happen? And maybe they try to explain something that could work.
Especially one that's really well versed in creative.
Yep.
So back to the mirror wrap. When doing a mirror wrap, do you set it up so that you pay a third party servicer to then pay the existing mortgage? Or do you make the payment to the seller and trust them to pay their mortgage? Or do you pay the existing mortgage yourself? Well, you could do any of those. However, what we found to work best currently is we directly make a payment to the mortgage company from a bank account. The only time I would pay the seller is if it's a free and clear property, in which case then I will pay the seller directly because there is no mortgage on the property. We haven't dabbled in servicing companies before. We've heard some things back and forth, but we've just
And we buy
been,
with wraps. I think a lot of
yeah.
times where you hear, like, I know Pace talks about that. So if you buy it with subject to, if you use a third party servicing company that could help them get a mortgage later on, if we buy in a wrap, it does that without having to get a third party company involved because the new note we created is what the new lender could see. And they see the 12 months of payments and then they could do their thing.
But I will say you have to be really spot on every single month, like double checking, making sure escrow does not change because even if it is a few cents off, yes, dollars or cents, not even like hundreds, but just a couple, then it doesn't get applied. It goes into a different account or something.
It sits there basically their limbo account. They don't apply any of it towards the actual payment.
Yeah. So you have to really make sure that you can log into the portal with the password, keep an eye on things, maybe get the paper statements, being in, that's why always say too, we want to work with sellers who are really awesome to work with because you might have to chat with them at some point. Ideally, you don't want to ever have to bother them, but it is a people business. So I just had a gentleman last week. He was like, it didn't get paid. I'm like, well, can you send me the statement? And sure enough, I think the payment went up by a couple bucks. And so I just had to make another payment and then reschedule my auto payments to make sure everything was good to go. So happy holidays. He's a nice guy though. So yeah, simple. Don't overthink it. Totally fine. Here we have, let's talk about agents quickly, because I know that's always another hot topic. Pros and cons of using an agent when trying to pitch creative financing.
Well, we've talked to a lot of agents, and some are, well, they're all the gatekeeper between you talking to that seller directly. Some are super awesome to work with and fantastic, and they will make your life so much easier. You're going to wish all agents were like this. And then there's the flip side of the agents who either don't understand and it's kind of just maybe foreign to them. And you could try to help nicely educate them best you can. However, you can't make them all work, right? And so there's a little frustration in there. However, I'm always trying to kill them with kindness. I want to make a deal. If I'm a realtor, I want to do two things. I want to sell a house, get a commission, but I also want to protect my seller, right? And if you could help them understand how you guys could all do business and it work well for everybody, you can do these deals. We have closed them. We've had sellers reach out to us. They were frustrated that their house wasn't selling on the market. We made that deal happen. We paid the real estate commission. Then we've had other times where the realtor reached out to one of my wholesaler buddies and he said, hey, this doesn't work for cash, but I think it would work for creative finance. Sellers way behind on the payments. And the realtor was a local Tampa realtor who, on a $500,000 house, really helped get that commission way, way down to make that deal happen. So they were super awesome to work with. And they were the one that brought up bringing their commission down. I didn't even have to even mention it. So we made that deal work. So when you're working with great realtors, it makes life awesome. But once again, they want to know how they're going to get paid. They want to sell this property and they also want to make sure that the seller's, protected and nobody's going to get in trouble, right? So that's my big key factor. How do you get through to some of the knuckleheads? Good luck. I just try to move on quickly as possible. But I also try to avoid realtors altogether unless I'm selling. And I generally like to go directly to the seller and generate off market leads. And if you could do that, your success rate will be a lot, I think, better. Because also, if you do a deal, you have to pay a realtor commission. Now, your cost of entry buying that deal just went up, right? Because if you're buying it with seller financing, you might need a down payment, realtor commission, closing costs, insurance policy. Now, it could be too much money where the deal doesn't work now, right? So if you go direct to seller, that eliminates those things too. Many people like using realtors because they can't figure out a way to get leads off market. But once again, we already shared that with you. So if you do that, you won't have to do this.
So is there any like big key like wording or verbiage when speaking to a realtor that you would use or avoid?
Well, one of the things I ask them if it's still available. If they say yeah, I ask them if it has any rental restrictions. Now, maybe where you live, it's not an issue, but we live in Florida and there's HOAs all over the place. And so you want to know what that looks like. And many times the realtor will say yes, no, I don't know. Once you find that out, I ask them if the property would need any type of more work. It looks great from the pictures. And then if they say no, I just ask them if they'd be open, if the seller would be open to terms if we were to work out the commission and pay the closing costs. And if they say yes, no, or maybe, determines if we get in the call. Many
Mhm.
will say yes. Some might not know what they just said yes to. You got to kind of explain. Some know what you're talking about. And like, yeah, we could do this. So it's great.
Mhm.
And then some will say, that's illegal. You can't do that. Um,
It's always a mixed bag with everybody.
yeah.
So
And it's
just,
not illegal. They
yeah,
just don't understand what's going on.
right.
Don't fight with them. Don't get all ruffled up. Understand who you're talking to, and then just try to get off the phone as fast as you can and move on to the next one because there's leads out there everywhere. And there are more sellers out there who need your help than you could even imagine. So stop wasting your time with time wasters or just people who don't get it and move on and find somebody who's motivated motivated to sell and you can help them. And that's where you want to focus your efforts to.
Ring that bell.
Get it.
All
Well, I
right.
mean, I know I'd always try to revive these dead leads and be like, oh yeah, and there's nothing there. Like, what am I spending all this time with? Move on and get another lead.
Buying subject to or on a wrap. Sometimes realtors are thinking or saying that it's illegal to buy properties this way. It's just it's not illegal is what
Yeah,
he's saying.
so sometimes realtors think that you can't buy a house and have the mortgage stay in place from the previous owner. They don't think you could do that. And if you look on a HUD statement, line 203 and 503, both of those lines on a HUD statement, just Google it, you'll pull up a HUD and look at it. And it talks about how to buy real estate subject to. It's literally right on there.
Yeah.
So I just kind of point them in that and just let them, hey, line 203 and 503 really walk through the process of how to buy real estate this way. It's pretty normal.
But like you said, really sticking to motivated sellers, and that's really the name of the game here. People
Mhm.
that are open to it. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about out of state investing, which we have become pretty good at, I would say, because we did move from New York to Florida. We've had some really great partner opportunities where we've done some JV deals. And so I think the biggest question, a lot of people are held back by it, is well, how do you get eyes on the property? So if something comes across your desk and it's not in your backyard, like what's that first step that you take?
Okay, so the one thing we've got two of these going on right now. If I have any real estate friends that I know that live in that area, I always reach out to them and ask them if they know somebody who could do a walkthrough for
And
us.
how do you find those real estate friends in the area?
I always join Facebook groups. I'm joining all types of Facebook real estate investing groups, and I find out who are the movers and shakers. We're in a mastermind. That's where he's actually from. And everybody inside the family mastermind, who's got probably 400 people in it, I want a friends request every one of them because they're all amazing people. And any mastermind event that we go to, I want a friends request everybody there too. Because I really feel like your village, your community, right? The people who you're with are going to be the ones that you could all work and figure out ways to make deals together. Um, so I've reached out to them and I said, hey, I'm buying a property in the area. I'm thinking about doing this with it. And can you lay eyes on it for me? I could pay you some money if you need be. No issues there. Sometimes if I'm going to wholesale it, they might be interested in either buying it or possibly even knowing a buyer in that area who buys those deals. And I've got one of those where we're going to send them to the property in New York
Mhm.
and the one that we're doing here in Florida.
So really building your network again, going back to social media, guys, use it as a business tool
Hmm.
and you can connect through Zooms, you can hop on phone calls. And then I also love your approach too, where you will find local realtors.
I was just going to say that. So
Yeah.
here's where I love realtors because we've got some great ones that we're working with right now. We did deals, one in Connecticut, one in South Carolina. We've never been to these properties. And I would just go on to Zillow and I would find recent sales in that area. I would even go back a year or two, right? Because I'm not checking for comps. What I'm looking for is I'm looking up the recent sales and I'm trying to see the listing agent. If I could find that same agent's name one or two times, three times. And the one we did in Connecticut, this one listing agent had like four sales within like 3 or 4 blocks of this house that we were buying. I said, what better realtor to talk to the area about this area than her? I call her up, absolutely 10 out of 10 realtor. Amazing. If anybody needs a realtor in the north of Hartford, Connecticut area, I've got the best one there. And she walks the property, tells me how much it's going to cost, knows what we could sell it for, gets 18 grand over asking, which was still $60,000 what I thought we were over what we were going to get for it. Crushed it. Right. And she facilitated the whole thing because she introduced us to the contractor because she's been doing it for 25 years, has like 400 5-star reviews on Google. So she's amazing. And so she's like, I work with these three contractors. I'll get quotes for you from all three. You pick which one. She gave us all three. She said, hey, this one can start now. And his prices were in line with the other two. That's who did the work for us. Did it quickly, did a great job. She gets the listing, gets another property sold, and she lives like 4 or 5 blocks over. She's like, oh yeah, this place, I'm already in the driveway. So I found local realtor to help with that. Same one we're doing in South Carolina right now on this mobile home that we bought. Realtor had some recent sales in the same area of mobile homes. I was like, well, what better guy to call than him? And Carl, with a K, is one of the nicest Southern boys you'd ever meet. And you want to just go to his house and just hang out with him because he's fantastic. And walk the property, found the contractor. He knows he's going to get the listing for it. He's excited, been super communicative the whole time. Wonderful person. So we list it with them once their contractor they recommend does a little bit of clean out, maybe a little bit of work, and we list it right away. So between realtor friends or going on Zillow or Google and finding out who are the realtors in the area that are helpful. And I've had some tell me, hey, listen, I do this like part-time. He's like, I got a job and I kind of sell houses once in a while. So I really don't know much about that area. I'm like, perfect. I know I do not have the right person to help me for this, but he pointed me in the direction of somebody who was really good, his broker. And that's what I was like, bingo. So just look for who's had sales in the area, and that will help you tremendously.
Yeah, and I feel like this is probably why you love real estate so much because it's literally like a game to you because it's like, okay, what like a little chess match. Okay, what's the next step I'm going to take? And okay, now that didn't work, so let's go this way, or all right, let's like pivot that way. And you have fun with it, which I think is inspiring because I think some people could get really down in the dumps when things get a little sideways, as they often do with creative deals at times. But you just have to have that stamina to keep going. And I would have never understood how we're doing what we're doing because we even take it a step further and have someone managing an LLC. So all documents have to go up to New York to get signed by our manager when we actually close on these properties too. So mobile notaries are amazing. And in this day and age, guys, there's a workaround and a figure it out for every single thing. So, again, it's making sure you're just taking that step-by-step action and not worrying, the what if, the could be is, oh my gosh, and just know that it's been done. You can do it.
I mean, when I did my first deal, I was 22 years old. This was the year 2000. There was no Google, no YouTube. I had VCR tapes, 6 audio cassette tapes, and a book. Okay. And I figured out from all this stuff what to do and just took massive action. And that's how I got a deal way back then. And that's what we're still doing now. I'm sure we'll always get better and continue to work at our craft. Maybe one day we'll feel like, hey, we're complete rock stars, but until then, we're always students wanting to get better and always learning, right? So, but taking massive action will get you there for sure.
Absolutely. So if you're in an area and you don't want to invest in it and there's one that you have your eye on, like use social media, use Google, use our tools that we have at our fingertips these days and tap into the networks. We have almost 4,000 people in our community here on Facebook, which is incredible. And then we also tap into other communities. So you just got to keep asking the right questions to get the answers that you're looking for.
Well, and the thing is, what I love about our Facebook method is like if you do like Facebook sponsored ads or Google, PPC ads or things like that, depending on where you want to do deals, marketing there could be very expensive. If I want to market in downtown Miami, that costs a lot of money per lead.
Yeah.
But I would think a place like Miami has a ton of Facebook groups, a whole bunch of millions of different kinds of Facebook groups that I could join for free, post my ad, and get in front of hundreds of thousands of people in that area for free just by doing that little blue ad anywhere. So once again, I haven't found a strategy that works this good ever, guys.
Hmm. Real quick on the realtor, do you pay them based on the purchase price for the offer? Example, you offer full price 100K with terms versus you pay 60K cash. What is the basis of the commission? Can you offer the realtor more money to incentivize them more? Pay a higher commission on the 60K.
Well, I will say if you're going to pay cash, the commission comes out of the sale of the house. If you come up with 60,000, the seller is going to have to furnish the 6% commission, right? So you going directly to that agent without having an agent on your side represent you, they know that they're going to get paid 6%. Now, obviously, they split that with their broker and things like that. They're going to get 6% of the 60,000. However, if I'm going to buy it for 100,000 with seller financing, and now I have to come out of pocket with as least down as possible to make that deal work, I got to cover closing costs. Does the seller need a down payment? Because I'd have to figure that out. I would pay that realtor based on that $100,000 sale, but I'm definitely going to try to negotiate that because I don't want to pay them 6 grand. Most likely, maybe I do, depending on the deal, but chances are you want to get that down. I've had realtors say, "Give me a couple grand." I've had one realtor's like, "Hey, listen, I'll do the deal. Just give me 1,500 bucks." And I was like, "High five to you. Let's go." Couldn't say yes fast enough, and he couldn't either. He didn't have to do squat for that deal, though. It was just given to him, and we're all happy as can be. So I would at least ask him, based on if I were to buy it 100 grand, what's the least you think you could do for your commission if I don't bring an agent on my side?
Everything is negotiable, right?
Everything.
Yeah. Great question coming in from Ashley. She's busy. She works 12 hours a day. Could she use a VA to respond to all the blue ads posting so the response time is fast?
So you can, if you're going to do it, we always post from our personal accounts.
Hmm.
So you might have to have your VA have access to your personal account. The only reason why is if you have a VA do it from another country, um, they're going to be posting that blue ad from their account to be able to talk to those people, right? And I have found that sometimes when you're using a VA from another country, I get called scam a lot when I say I live right here in Florida. When somebody else is posting this from another country, they might get that even more.
And we had trouble because we had our and VA is virtual assistant. So we have a couple of ladies in the Philippines that work with us, and I've had them even try to help me out before. I think it was on the rent to own side, and they really had trouble. They couldn't post from their account. So you could, I mean, anything is possible. There are some workarounds there for it. I will say the hardest thing to do in regards to a VA or anybody that's going to help you is the training. So we are huge advocates on making sure that you yourself know how to do everything from front to back, A to Z, so that they're properly trained. Otherwise, you maybe could find someone who's been trained, and that's a little tricky. But you just want to make sure that you build in that training time because that's really, really important, especially when you're, running a business. But there are ways to do that. And even with 12-hour days, I would just find a little bit of time. It takes like 5 minutes to join groups. It takes about 5 minutes to post in the groups, and then just try to time it so when you can go back and respond to the comments. Obviously, speed delete is very important, but just getting back to people is also very important. So just not putting that extra stress on yourself and just doing what you can do with what you've got. I think a lot of us are high achievers and we can stress ourselves out very easily. I am one of them. But sometimes you just do what you can do. And that is often more than enough. And I don't think we recognize that. I know there's so many people that are doing really big things in this industry and it's so incredible. But at the end of the day, if you're working full time and you've got a full plate or a sick parent or little kids, like something's got to give, right? So just do the best you can do. And guys, just sitting on your phone and posting these ads and running that 10 questions back and forth, like you could be sitting on a deal. You could get a $16,000 check. You could get a property for $100 down. It is possible. So don't look at all the time you don't have and really focus on, well, do I have 20 minutes here, 15 minutes there? And, you just kind of fit it in and make that happen. So again, it's kind of like that mind hack, if you, I mean, you had no time And it was like, what could you do before work? What could you do maybe if you came home for lunch for a quick phone call? And what could you squeeze in at 9 p.m. at night?
Well, you know what? And I think about it, like I was going through my phone today looking for some pictures from some training I was at last summer. And I come across a couple HUD statements of properties that we bought. And I think of one of the ones that we bought was in Ogden, New York, or not Ogden,
Ogdensburg.
Ogdensburg, New York. And I'm looking at the HUD statement, and we bought this property with no money down. It was $2,700 in closing costs. And we own this house without going to a bank, without using credit. The house is a cute little house. We didn't do anything to it. It was turnkey. Did we do anything to the house?
No, we placed a tenant buyer
Right.
because the lady moved in, didn't work out family wise. She ended up moving back to North or South Carolina.
Yep.
She wasn't even there a year, I don't think.
Correct.
So the situation just totally fit everybody.
So they sold it to us. We bought this thing with 2,700 bucks out of pocket. Now we own this piece of real estate, guys. And it's just one of a bunch that we've done this way. And this is why it's creative finance. I don't know many other ways that you could buy a turnkey house that's rent ready with just 2,700 bucks out of pocket, and the thing cash flowed from day one. The minute we put in our rent to own person who gave us, I think it was $10,000 to move into that house.
Oh, I think around then. Yeah.
Gave us $10,000 to move into that house. You can see right away that's a great deal. We don't have any more credit or any credit tied to the deal. No money at that point. And it's just 100% pure profit on a neat house that didn't need anything. And when we found out how to do real estate this way, we're like, we don't have to buy just junkers anymore. We could buy these turnkey houses too. And when a seller says, I can't sell it for any less than what I owe on it, what else are you able to do? You can't come up with a cash offer if it's way under that. So this is where having that terms offer works out really, really well. So if you're talking to a seller and they don't have any equity, especially if they just bought it, those are people we do a lot of deals with, just for what that's worth.
The question is there more wealth to be had in buy and hold or rent to own? This is like the age old question. I think it's such a great question because it's kind of like, what's better, this or
I mean, if you
a
were at our,
Lambo or a Porsche, right?
if you were at our meeting with our accountant just now, I don't know. Our rent to own, we sold off 4 of our properties this year. And from that alone, the one property but we bought, I pulled up the HUD statement. We bought it for 5,200 bucks. That was for Nunda. And in 2 years, we make 130,000 because we bought it with seller financing. We had to make probably 3 payments of 1,700 before we found our renter. We had to put on an insurance policy. The house is good. We just had to put smoke alarms in it. But when we found our renter, they gave us a check for first month's rent, which was 3 grand. Meanwhile, we only had to pay 1,700. They gave us 25,000 to move in, so the check was for 28 grand total when they moved in. And then they just bought it a month or 2 ago. We just got the back end check. Within 2 years, you make $130,000 on a $5,200 initial investment to make that deal happen. But there's, I don't know, probably 15 grand behind it, all the other closing costs and stuff.
Yeah, and that's just the numbers end of it. I think too, you have to look at your lifestyle because Joe and I never had in our head that I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that we were going to have like 5,000 doors and all of these units and property management companies and everything, all this like la la la. Maybe one day, I don't know. But at the moment, like that's not what I want. I would much rather set it and forget it, have a tenant buyer, provide a home that eventually a renter will buy and become a homeowner and
Yeah,
then
because they're way better clients.
cash out, and then you can then use that money for whatever you want, buy more properties, maybe get to those
Well, and we'll give
millions
the
of doors.
yeah, we'll give them the California Drive idea is we have one that our renters ready to buy it. We're about to get a really big check for well over 100 grand. And I think we've mentioned that before is that you could take that money, that's fine. You could reinvest that into more properties. You could put it into a 1031 exchange and multiply that into a couple more properties. So if I do sell one with rent to own and we lose one door, can I turn that into like the one in Ogdensburg? I needed 2,700 bucks. Well, if I get a check for 140, 150,000, I could buy a lot of those properties, right? Now, not everybody will do it, no money down. You might
Right.
run into somebody who says, I need 20 grand down to move. Well, good news is you've got to spend that money. So you're almost looking for somebody who wants 20 grand down to make the deal happen, especially if it's turnkey and the rest of the numbers work out really well.
I just fell in love with the model too. I think what if you just try it on one
Well,
and
you want to tell them why? We just had to pay two. We have one rental, one rental property. All the others are all rent to own. And in the one property, we have a tenant last year where her middle of the wintertime in upstate New York, super cold, furnace stopped working. Now, this was a long time ago
a
because I
few
was still
years
at
ago.
work. And furnace stopped working. We had to send out somebody to find out the thermostat battery died. And when she put it in backwards. And so all they did was they got that good battery put in the right way and it worked just fine. So we had to pay for that bill, 100 and something bucks for the emergency for them to go out there. And then recently she says, hey, I'm getting water backed up in the basement. The sub pump's not working. And I call nonsense because we just had that sub pump replaced, all new everything. So I know it's perfect. Well, they tripped a GFI breaker somewhere in the house doing, I don't know, whatever happened. And so the sub pump wasn't on. So they had to turn whatever on and now it works just fine.
So yeah, there's just more phone calls and more, what could be headaches. And I guess when you're in the game long enough, you're kind of like, okay, here's water in the basement. Let's call up the contractor. So you just kind of deal with it. But it is nice to not have to get those calls all of the time. I will admit that.
Yeah. He's like, there goes 200 bucks for me to go push this button in.
Yeah. And 3 hours of his life. Thank you, Kevin. Oh goodness. Ahmad has a question. If we do a lease purchase from a seller, are we putting a down payment? Does it work the same as rent to own?
So when I am doing a lease purchase from a seller, I put it with no money down. I might give them $100 deposit, but that's all we're gonna do. If they want a first month's rent or something like that, worst case scenario, okay, maybe. But I'm not giving them 10, 20, 30, $40,000. Nope. We buy on terms and we sell on terms. However, we do not buy and sell the same way, if that makes sense. So I want to buy with no money down and I want to see who's got the most amount of money down when I'm selling.
There we go. This question came up.
You got it.
What?
Oh, he said
Oh,
thanks.
you're welcome. So yeah, creative. How do we market for finding rent to own or lease to own buyers? And I shared a ton of my Instagram post because we always have so much fun making these beautiful yellow signs. They're really ugly, actually. But one great way to find rent to own buyers is everywhere that you would find a normal renter. The process will change a little bit, but you want to put it out there. Facebook Marketplace, Facebook groups, Facebook page, personal pages, Zillow, possibly Craigslist. That's hit or miss, obviously, these days with the scammers. But definitely, let it be known. Even have an open house if you're local or have the ability to. Let everyone know, like, hey, from noon to 2, I'm here. Come check the house out. Because again, if you're letting the world know that you are offering a house to someone that has bad credit or no credit, and they can get into this home and they just need a couple of qualifying items and they'll give them time to fix their credit, you'll get a lot of phone calls.
Yeah, and you help a lot of wonderful people out. Or
Yeah.
maybe just great people just had a situation go on. Maybe their credit took a little ding, or many times their credit's really good, but they're self-employed and they have to realize in order to qualify for a mortgage, instead of doing 20 loans a week, they have to do 25 loans a week. So they know that they've got to do an increase. There's certain things that you'll find that are maybe just they're not there quite yet, but they could move into a quality home. They're happy. They're going to have plans of buying it. So they treat it way better. They don't call you for stuff because they know they're going to be doing it and they want to do it and they want to. And that's what's really cool. And then once they buy, so you've turned a renter into a homeowner. And when you're providing somebody with, a house, we give them a home, which is
Mhm.
really cool on our end because it is awesome. And then you get a big old check, which you could definitely reinvest back in your business and you should.
So just really making sure you have the proper paper trail, closing with attorneys, not just at, Starbucks. You want to make sure everybody has all the paperwork done correctly and you're agreed on your lease and you have your lease option. So
Yeah,
always make
yeah.
sure you have the proper education there. What do you tell the seller when you buy on lease purchase? Do you tell them you plan on turning around and leasing it out?
So actually, Trace, that's a great question. We do, because we know our exit strategy is rent to own. So I tell them right off the bat, especially if I'm going to be doing rent to own, the property is that I'm going to lease it from you, and then I'm going to put in one of my clients who's going to plan on living there, leasing the property until they're able to qualify for a mortgage. And once they do and they get us cashed out, we pay you off. That's when your mortgage gets paid off, and that's when I make a little something too. And until then, we take care of all the maintenance repairs, so you don't have to worry about getting any of the phone calls.
You say it just like that.
Just like that.
Alrighty. So this is asking about some general guidelines. On a seller finance deal, is there a general guideline regarding purchase of a property higher than market value? He has a seller who's adamant on their off market property duplex. It's worth more than the current market value due to location. Property is smack dab in the path of progress with new commercial, city infrastructure, and residential flips. It would still cash flow, but he feels like the biggest issue would be if the property doesn't appraise when the balloon is due. Any thoughts would be appreciated.
So for me, I always want to get as long as term as possible, especially if I'm going to pay that price. And I kind of teeter. This is why I love creative finance, because there's so many different levers that you could pull on to negotiate a deal. If you want that higher price, I can, but I'm going to need a longer term to cash you out. Or you could add some type of verbiage to your agreement stating that if the property doesn't appraise for XYZ value at the time that you need to refinance it, this will extend your term for XYZ time length. So, for an example, if somebody says, no, I need to have a 7-year term, well, if the property doesn't appraise in that 7 years for whatever kind of value we both determine, then I will extend this term for 3 more years.
That's all about the paperwork.
It's all about the paperwork.
I like this question a lot. So it kind of seems like, we talk a lot about lead generation.
Can I say one more thing real
Oh,
quick on that?
yeah, sorry.
I just popped in my head,
Go
but this
for
is
it.
why we also don't do short terms
Oh, yeah.
unless we get huge discounts. Short terms means I'm getting it for a huge discount, but they want to get cashed out in a short amount of time. If somebody wants to get cashed out in a short amount of time, I need to be able to make sure I bought that property right, really, really low, right? If somebody wants a high price for their property, but they're willing to be open to terms, I could pay that price. The only way I can make that work is I need to have a long term. And I'm not talking like 5 years. I'm talking like 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And don't be surprised when somebody says yes to 30 years if you ask the right way instead of
Mhm.
assuming they won't.
Mm-hmm.
We can't assume. And this is one of the biggest problems that we've had always when I was training salesmen, even at my old job, was we assume this was going to happen. And we just can't. We have to ask right questions and find out what works best for that situation with that seller. Have them give you the offer just by asking that right question.
That is so true. And again, it's like all mindset.
Yep.
You ready for my question?
Yeah, let's go. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I love this because we're talking a lot about lead generation and doing our own deal hunting and finding and structuring. But there's also deals available that, often get posted in our groups. We have deals sometimes that come through. So this person's asking from a buyer side of the equation, what are some typical guidelines you suggest that we should be paying attention to as a buyer or investor when picking up these creative finance deals? Like entry fee percentages or PITI versus possible rental, LTR, MTR, STR, exit criteria. So just kind of like some little suggestions there when it comes to buying a creative
Now
deal.
that is a great
I
question.
thought so. It came
Yeah,
from
I love it.
Naveen.
So here's the factor that I'm always looking at when I'm going to analyze any deal. First thing for me is cost of acquisition. How much cash do I need to buy this deal? Right? As far as maybe there's a down payment, there could be commissions. There's obviously going to be an assignment fee, right? If somebody's sharing this deal that's available for sale, they're going to want a finder's fee, or what you'll see as an assignment fee. That's what that is. So you're going to want to pay that person. There's going to be the closing costs, all the things, guys. We have what's called a cost of acquisition, where it's like I don't know, there's probably a good dozen things you want to add up. And you want to see what that much money is, because when you see a deal that's like, hey, $10,000 down, but you might need 25 grand to close that deal. Right. So this is why it's super important to make sure that you are looking at your cost of acquisition. Sorry, I don't know why my computer's wanting to do
I
this.
didn't do it this time.
Crazy thing. I look at my cost of acquisition. The second thing I'm going to look at is how much money am I making per month? what kind of deal am I getting on the property as far as what's the value of it versus what do I think it's worth? What kind of term length am I getting on this deal? So I'll give you a couple examples of deals I would love and some deals I would run from. Deals that I'd love. I could get into this deal. Maybe the investor wants a $10,000 finder's fee, and there's 4 or 5,000 for closing costs, and I add it all up, and my total cost of acquisition is 25,000. And I know I need 25,000 to buy this property, but I'm buying it, and it's buying it for 300,000, and it's worth 375, and my payment's 1,400, and it rents for 2,600, and it's turnkey and beautiful. I would love that deal, especially if it's in a really nice area. I would do those deals all day long. And we find those deals, guys. They're out there more than you could imagine. So turnkey property, I preferably like to be 20,000 or under total out of pocket for when I buy a property for my cost of acquisition. The reason why is when I turn around and do a rent to own, I know to buy one of these properties rent to own, I'll typically find somebody who's got 20 to 30,000, maybe even more. So I know I usually get my initial investment back out of it when they give me that non-refundable option deposit. So now I'm actually getting paid in many of these circumstances to even buy the real estate once I do get that non-refundable option deposit, right? Because maybe they gave me way more than I actually had to come up with to buy the deal. And that happens. I'm cash flowing. Love those kind of deals. So deals I would avoid. I don't like super big old houses. I don't like them. You give me a house from 1870 that's 3,600 square feet. I hate those houses. I'm just being honest with you. They're cool to look at, but I don't want to own any of them. Unless it's been like completely redid every single thing on it, then, I would consider. But I typically don't buy those houses. I don't buy deals where they want half down to close the deal. Say this is a creative finance deal and they're selling to you for 400,000, but they'll do it with half down. Like that's crazy. I don't buy those deals unless they're selling to me for 400,000 and they will finance it with half down and it's worth 650, something crazy like that, then I would definitely entertain that. But typically you don't just have those deals floating around, but I'd always keep my eyes peeled because you never know what you can see. Generate leads. So I don't like deals with high cost of entry with no cash flow. I had one recently. The gentleman tells me he wants 25% down. He wants 9% interest amortized over 30 years. And when I put on the tax, insurance, and everything, I would be spending $1,000 more per month to own it than it cost me to rent it. Because he put on Zillow that's a property that's available for rent, or you could buy it. And he's like, and in his comments, he's like, I'm also open to seller financing. So I call him. So I got to come up with 25 percent down, which was like 85 grand, to lose $1,000 a month to buy this house. That doesn't make any sense at all. And I told him, I was like, why would I come up with 85 grand to buy it from you when I could just rent it to you from you for 900 bucks a month less? He's like, well, I'm negotiable. And I was like, man, we're not even close. Right. But we're still following up. But that's the case, guys. So I avoid those deals. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
I also was just thinking too, one of these questions talking about like the balloons and how do you pay off the balloon if it's a short period of time, 3 to 5 years, which you've already stated we don't really like those kind of deals because it is really short. But that's another reason why we love rent to own because we don't have to go to the bank. We have no intentions of ever
I'm financing it.
borrowing again.
Yeah. So that's why our renter is going to buy the property. We have that extra strategy already kind of burnt into how we're buying it.
Mhm.
Now, if I have a renter who I could tell that's going to take a long time to buy the property, and I know I have to get that seller cashed out in 5 years, I might have to be mindful to find somebody that I know I could get cashed out in a couple of years. And that depends on a few things: their job, their income, what their current credit situations look like, all of the things. There's a many factors. So you could be a little bit just more selective, knowing on who I'm going to install as my tenant buyer. Because usually when you put a property out like this, like you will have a flood of people reaching out to you for this deal. A flood of people. Some people don't have any money, most won't. There'll be a bunch that do. You just got to find out who's the best fit.
Yep.
And then make a waiting list, right? So maybe they didn't get that property, but now you have a waiting list for the next property you have in that area, and you've already got your rent to own buyers list. We actually created a rent to own Facebook group, and every time we'd have one, we just share it in there.
We have a page and a group. Yep. Yeah.
That's the drill, guys.
Yeah.
So great questions you guys have this week. I was super excited because, like, seriously, this is
Yeah.
awesome.
The fact that it is December, there's a ton going on, and there's a bunch of you showing up, still pouring into your education. Now, my biggest tip to you is to go take some action, even if you're scared, especially if you're scared. If you have a property you're looking to place a rent to own buyer, then just start marketing it as such. Check out 585 Rent to Own. You can borrow all of my wording, just don't take my photos, and definitely share what you're offering the people because they will take you up on that.
Absolutely. And guys, if you need to learn more about how you can do this, because I know some of you have questions about, like, hey, this sounds great, but how can I do that? Let's get on a call. I'd love to talk to you about your business and see what that looks like and see how myself and Jen can help. I give out my cell phone number, guys. I did on Bigger Pockets. I do it definitely for you guys. If you don't have a pen, write this down. If you're listening, write this down. My cell phone number is 585 207 2240. You can call me or text me. Try not to call me at like 1 in the morning. My phone's on quiet anyways, most likely, so I won't hear it, but I
I
do
might call
get
you
those.
5 a.m.
But hey, you call me, text me. But if you have something you want to talk about with your real estate business and see how we could help, I'd love to chat. And then who do we have coming next week?
Next Tuesday is a really fun day. We are having, well, an in-person meeting. So if you want to come down to sunny Florida, Tuesday evening, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern, we are having a in-person meetup at Oscura. It's a cool little coffee shop, wine bar. Well, they have all sorts of things, snacks, foods, and talking real estate. Bring a toy to donate. We are excited to give back to the community. But then Tuesday live at 2 p.m. Eastern, we have lined up Al Nicoletti.
Boom.
He is a probate attorney out of Jacksonville, or yeah, couldn't remember if he was in Miami.
He's
He's in
from
Florida.
Miami originally.
Oh, that's what it was. So he's incredible. I'm stoked to have him on. He's full of knowledge, has a lot of stories. We're going to try to dig deep into some of his. Yeah.
Phenomenal probate attorney. So
Mhm.
once somebody pass away and they inherited the property, what does that process look like? What are some of the questions? What are some of the things to look for? Al is going to dive deep into all of that stuff because you will talk to a seller at some point who inherited a property.
Yeah.
You're going to want to know the right steps and right questions to ask. Al's a pro. He's an attorney. This is exactly what he specializes in. And he's going to be here next week. So if you have any questions for Al that you want to have answered, send them to us.
Hmm.
And obviously, we'll get those on the podcast. And if you want to join us live next Tuesday, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be here, guys.
Yep.
So,
And
and it's holiday season. So, we're going to be having some fun, right?
yeah, so we're excited for all of that. And let's make these next few weeks strong. There's still lots of time to talk to sellers, help them out in some situations. And again, we're here for you guys. Reach out if you need us.
You guys have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. See you soon. Bye, guys.